So I am expecting that I'm actually on air right now. Let's just go ahead and not worry about it. So today I'm going to introduce you to the Unity game engine. And so first of all, I want to give you a little bit of context because on Monday we were talking about the illusion of reality. And there's a couple of more things I want to say about that. So one of the things we talked about was that that people have some kind of a mental image of what they expect to see. You know, it's like the mind's eye, so to speak, and all perceptual events are used to kind of almost validate that image. And what image is the most prevalent in our minds? We sort of got at it on Monday, but we didn't quite say it explicitly. One of the main mental images that we have embedded deeply in our minds is that the world is 3D. It is that we live in a three-dimensional world. That's like a really ingrained, and in fact, we also said that we feel like, okay, the sun is above us and things like that. We have that sense, and that's our mind's eye is trying to verify this hypothesis all the time. And that's also why when we looked at that room that we immediately tried to jump to conclusions about that being a square room and so on. So this being such a strong mental image, we just have to give people little hints about the three-dimensionality, and we will jump at those hints and reconstruct that image or that environment as a three-dimensional environment in our heads. So that said, so we basically on Monday we talked about it's like a bag of tricks, cues that we can use to hand people to help them validate the theory that they are living in a 3D space. And that's actually where these engines come in. And some of you may have seen this picture before because I teach a separate course on game engines, and this is where I talk about this in more depth. But I just want to review a little bit what I say there. So think of some kind of an engine, a black box. You don't have to worry about what's inside the box. You just have to work with this box. This engine that I, in this class, would like to term the illusion engine. In the game engine course, of course, we talk about it as a game engine. But let's just think about this engine here, this box, as an illusion engine that knows all the tricks that we talked about on Monday. So what you have to do to create the illusion, you feed this box with data about the environment that you want to create, that you want to build. You feed that into the engine. The engine does something with this data, and what comes out on the other end is the illusion of a world, of an environment. And this is meant to be a convincing rendition of an environment that a person can believe in. So this already includes all these special cues. You don't have to think necessarily about the cues over here, but the engine adds those cues and out comes something that is believable. So this, I think, is a basic concept. And in the virtual environments business, we can pick between different engines. There are different engines out there. Most of them are game engines, but we don't have to use all the gaming features. What we are really interested in is this part. And what is this data that you are feeding it? What are you actually putting on top of the illusion engine? You are specifying some kind of a world. So that's your work. That is your contribution to this illusion, is to feed the engine with the right type of description of data. And essentially, there are two main types of things here. There's the environment itself, the world itself, that is like a container of sorts, like the space. And then inside the space, you place objects. And those are the entities that populate the world and you interact with. Your players, your users will interact with these objects. So that's the basic structure. You have an engine, and you as a developer of virtual environments, you build the world and populate it with objects. One more step to consider. Each object, each and every object is built out of two parts. You can see the light part and the dark part there. I'm just going to show all of these here. The light part of an object is what we call assets, or something that you create in this is called this DCC is a digital content creation tool, like Photoshop, like Maya, anything that you use to build 3D objects, to paint textures, and all of that stuff. These are termed assets or resources, and they explain what that object looks like in the world. What is the part of the object that you can actually see in the environment? That is the light part of the object. And then there's a little bit of a darker part there, and that determines how the object behaves in the world. And when I say behavior, I'm using it in a very broad sense. Behavior could even be how it behaves physically when dropped. That's a behavior. And those types of behaviors, they are specified using scripts or programming languages. So if you tie these two things together, the visual assets or the auditorial assets, and then the programs, scripts, then you have a full object, a full, you could say, a citizen of the virtual world, a citizen that can appear in the world and can also be interacted with or behave in the world. So a game engine will look at both of these things and make sure that they all operate in conjunction to create the illusion. That top one there, the scene, the wrapper around this, all of this, that is often treated as a separate, like you could say, entity, which is like the container itself, and it brings all the game objects together, and it's usually called a scene, and you're usually using what is called a scene editor to bring these things together. So if you're using a game engine, it comes often with a scene editor, and in the scene editor you bring all the objects together. So anything unclear about this high-level picture? I mean, this is the fundamental approach to building these illusions. There's the engine, and I also point out that typically the engine is a black box, and you as the developer of either games or environments in general, you don't have to go into the engine to do anything. You don't have to change the code in the engine, but some engines open up to modification, and so you can actually get the source code and change the way that the engine does things, but that's not always necessary. So that was a really high-level picture. And now I wanted to introduce you to Unity as one of these illusion engines that can make the world appear lifelike and real for you. First of all, let me just point you at the resources you already have to one really good thing about the Unity engine is that you get pretty much all of its features for free. So if you are building virtual environments and you have no money, this is the way to go typically. You just grab this engine, it's easy to download, set up, and start working. And you can just click on Get Unity, which is Unity 5, and that's perfectly fine. And you're using a personal edition, which is the free version. And it's pretty much a complete version. And then you also have these options to learn about Unity. So you can do tutorials, look at documentation, and so on. So actually, all of this is very complete, very easy to access. So I'll really just point you in this direction, and you on your own, you can look at these things and figure them out. But what I like to do is also talk a little bit about these things myself. So that's why today I'm going to walk through some of the things that you can also learn in tutorials, but you can, that's sort of additional materials. Unity has been around since about 2005, and we're up to version 5 of Unity. So it's been a while in development, and it's also kind of a fun trivia that that the founder of Unity, David, is an Icelandic person, but although he did all of the development in Denmark and living now in San Francisco. So we can take a little bit of pride in this as a national thing that came out of Iceland, but really it came out of Denmark. So it's a little bit long and far-fetched maybe. But it is a very good engine, and what makes it specifically, what was the strength of Unity in particular, was that immediately from the beginning, they targeted different platforms. So it was not tied to just, actually it came first out on a Mac, the Mac OS, and then they developed a version for the PC. So now they had Windows and Mac, and that was the first real big strength of it. And then they added all of the different Apple platforms, you know, the iPads and stuff. They've added the Android platforms, and now it's like 20 platforms that are supported by Unity. And the interesting thing about it is that it's completely transparent to the developer. You make your environment, you hit the button to build it, and select the platform. That's pretty much it. End of story. So it's a really powerful way to reach different platforms. And I'm not actually being paid by Unity, by the way, to say any of these things. I can also talk about its drawbacks. We'll probably come to that later. Okay, so let's just get started and open it up here. So this is what happens when you start it up. And we will create a new project from scratch. And you can select your folder where you want to place the project. I'm just going to do it right there. And then I'm going to do demo 1 here. One interesting thing to note at this point is that you put a project name there, and the location is a folder in your machine. A project in Unity is actually a folder. It's not a single file. So when you do this, it will create a folder called VN Demo 1. It will create that folder within that. So you don't have to go and create a special folder for this project. It's going to create a project folder. At this stage, you also get to choose whether you're doing 3D or 2D. 3D is what we want to be doing here, 3D environments. But this kind of changes some parameters about the camera and so on. But 3D, let's do that. So that's it, create a project. And we should be getting then the whole environment set up for us for 3D work. And this is the interface to all of Unity scene editing. And in the middle there, we see the view into the world, which is empty, of course. We haven't developed any content for it. And we can also get kind of a working view of the world. And this is a working view where we can see a little bit behind the scenes of what we are working with. So we typically work in a working view of the scene itself. Then there are these 3 different areas here on the screen around the world that are important. And you will see kind of how they work. But let's just say something a little quick about it. This project view here down at the bottom, this panel here, this is like your box of bricks. Like if you like Legos or whatever, like you toys, this is your toy chest down here with all the toys you can play with. Then, well, of course they're not in the world yet, they're just in the box. Then you reach into the box and you bring them into the world. This panel up here, this one here, that's the box of all the things that are currently in the world. So this is the scene content, if you will. And then this is all about things you can work with. So you can take things from here, drop them in there, and now they are in the world. Unity also comes with its own set of templates for toys you can add, and those are all in this menu called game objects here. So that's like another toy chest up there, kind of a standard default one. So you can also bring objects into your world by selecting them here, and they will pop into the world. But everything, all game objects, so you remember the view in that at the top of on top of the game engine, the scene and all the objects in it. This is really the list of objects. So, and when you start up with a new scene, you have two objects already in the scene. There's the camera and there's a light. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to turn off the lights. You will see there's a panel on the right. These are the properties of the selected objects. So I've selected the directional light. And these are all the properties. Literally, this side of the image is in some ways analogous to the behavioral part of the object. So this is kind of how the object behaves in the world, and you can modify that. But I'm going to do something drastic about the behavior of the light. I'm just going to turn it off. I'm just going to turn it completely off. And I'm also, you see there's this, I kind of actually hate the sky in the default Unity world. And even, I'm going to do something even also a bit drastic there. I'm going to turn off that thing. So I'm going to go into a special panel that talks about lighting the world. We don't have to go into this yet, but I'm going to turn off this this skybox. Now we're talking. This is a completely bare bones environment. No sky, nothing, no light. All we have is a camera pointing out into the world. And if we run our engine now, we run with play button up there, there's nothing. It's the void. So let's actually put something in there. And let's just use the standard things that come with Unity here, the standard template objects. And we can go into a game object, 3D objects. And I'm going to put a plane in there. Plane is just a flat surface, and there it is. And you can see that it got added to the list of objects currently in our world, and it comes along with a few behaviors here that have already been assigned to it. So I was using kind of a Unity standard object that came already made with some behaviors and stuff. I'm going to change the size of this object a little bit. The first part, these are all called components. So each object contains a lot of components that determine its behavior in the world. And one of the components that all objects have is the transform component. This is the ability of an object to exist in space, pretty much. If it doesn't have that, it doesn't exist in the world. It tells the world where it is and how big it is and how it's rotated. So these are, for the computer graphics people, these are the transforms that make it possible to view the object in the world from the point of view of the camera. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger. I'm scaling it up along the X and Z axis. So now the plane is pretty big. And I'm also going to add a cube. So I'm adding a cube there. So now you see up there, there's a plane and a cube. And I'm going to put the cube in the center. Actually, I'm going to put it a little bit above the plane. And just like that, I think. Yeah, or maybe a little bit higher up. And I'm going to play the world now. Okay, I'm looking at a cube. Great. Actually, I can maybe see the plane a little bit. If I put the cube a little further down, I'll rotate the camera a little bit to maybe, where's the plane? Ah, not seeing the plane. Okay, the camera is just below it. There you go. So what I'm actually doing now is that I can select any of these objects and I can manipulate them. And through these arrows, I can move the object around in any direction. Or I can, this is because I've selected the move operation here. But if I do a rotation operation, I can rotate the object in any direction. So I can adjust the placement of each object pretty easily. So I think right now I should be looking at the plane with a cube in there somewhere, but we can't see it. And it's all very flat somehow. And maybe I'll do this. Ah, okay, the plane is in a weird place. Okay. Okay, that's the view I wanted. Okay, so this is, now I play this. Okay, I'm playing the world. Okay, now I'm looking into the world and I'm seeing the ground and I'm seeing our cube. But do you have a sense of 3D space? No, you don't actually have. I mean, why is that? Why don't you feel like, hey, it's a cube, it's a plane, it's a sorry? No depth. There are no cues really. We don't have the cues that we were talking about. So we can crank up a little bit those cues to have a better feeling for the environment. And one thing that will immediately make a difference is when we add, and I'm going to start with this, light. Okay, I'm going to turn on the light. Okay. We see a little bit. We see now at least the difference between the plane and the cube. And they are different colors right now because they're facing the light from different directions. And that surface is facing the light differently than this surface. So we see actually already some effect of the light on different surfaces. And the cube, make sure that it's a little bit above here. Okay, you can see it. So you can even see that the other side of the cube is darker. This already is starting to give us a sense of at least two separate objects and that they are placed in relation to something else. What else could we do to give more cues here? Shadows. Exactly. So let's add the shadows. And we'll do that by doing the directional light and pick a shadow type from the light. And let's do hard shadows there. Okay, now we have a little bit of a shadow there. And you already get a greater sense of the height of the object and the position of the object with relation to the light itself. So if you move around the object now, actually we can have the game view. We can actually track the game view somewhere else to see it. Oh, did I? Ah, okay, there you go. Like there. So I have the cube and I can move the cube around. You can see that. And the shadow follows. So that's already all set up for us. We talked a little bit of what other cues did we mention? For example, this plane here, seeing the plane recede into the distance might be cool to know that this is closer than that, or further away. So one thing we talked about was patterns or textures, and that's basically what textures can help you do. And so we'd like to paint this surface with a texture. And a texture is a type of an asset that we could drag from our toy chest, our projects. When you start a new project, that chest is empty. There's nothing that you can use in here right now. But you could make something in Photoshop or something like that. And you can drag from your file system right into this folder. And it will appear in your set of resources. So you can make a picture in Photoshop, drop it in here. You can even use the Photoshop native file format, and Unity will just use that format. So you can edit the resources live. There's another way to get to fill the chest with things to do that you can play with, and that is to use asset packages. And Unity comes with a few asset packages already. And if you go into assets, these are the packages that are available to you right from the beginning. And right now, just to get a couple of simple textures, I'm going to import the prototyping package. Prototyping package is kind of gives you some building blocks that are in like pretty much non-determined. It's kind of like replace me textures, if you will, and then just to get the environment more or less figured out, and then later you can texture with the actual textures. So it added a couple of folders, and in the standard assets folder, you have some prototyping folder materials, and here in this one you have materials. And these are materials that actually already contain textures and a few more information, bits of information about that. And you can take any of these things and drag them right on top. Oh, see, I'm dragging this from this chest here right into the scene and dropping it. And that's what the texture looks like. It's a grid. So now our plane looks like a grid. In our game view, you can see the grid is kind of big, though. Maybe you're looking down the line here. So if we wanted, we could increase we can basically change the scale of the texture a little bit. We can even go a little higher. So now you can see more lines. And now we get exactly the effect that we were looking for, because in fact we're getting the, for example, we can get the perspective shortening here. So these lines getting shorter give us a clue about how far they are. But also just we can think of the squares as getting smaller and smaller and denser, and that gives us a feeling of distance. And we'll put the yellow one on the little cube there. So now we have a yellow cube on that plane right there. And let's now add one more object here, the sphere. Here's the sphere. And you can see there's actually several different ways that I can manipulate these properties. You notice that sometimes I'm just dragging the object around here, and you can see the values changing in that window over here for the transformation. Or I can just go straight into the transformation window and type the number I want, and therefore place it precisely. That's a really good way to place things exactly the way you want them, because sometimes dragging them feels a little bit not too precise. So I'm going to place it there, and if I want to see it from a different perspective, okay, here I can turn this to look at from the top. I can press this to see from the side, top and side. I want it to be a little bit more over the cube. So I think I'll put the cube in the middle there. And the sphere is now more or less above it, I think. Yeah. There's one little funny thing here in this view, that you can change between perspective view and orthogonal view. And if you look at the view now, this looks very strange. Let's see, perspective. Okay, this looks correct, this view here. And then if I do this, then I basically lose the the perspective rendering. Let's see. So if I want to see if things line up from the top, for example, then I want to make sure that I'm looking straight from above and that things won't necessarily go smaller and smaller the further away they go, because I want to see if they line up. And if they go smaller the further away they go, then I can't see that lining up anymore, because they're all different sizes all of a sudden. So it's kind of nice to be able to switch to this orthogonal view from the top and see how everything is lined up perfectly. And then perspective view gives me that weird, like basically the real view of things, like that. When I'm moving around the environment, and you will see this in your tutorials and also on the lab on Friday, is that you can kind of fly around the environment using the WASD keys, just like in a game environment, while you're holding in the right mouse button and looking around like this. I'm going to add, okay, I'm going to make the ball a little like that. So I have now a world of two objects, and I'm playing it now. This is actually a running simulation here, but nothing is happening. It's a believable snapshot maybe, but it's not a believable interactive world at all. So what can you imagine that we still need to add just to get a little bit more live into this? Sorry? Some movement. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if they would move? And the basic type of movement that you assume objects have is a reaction to physics, or to the, say, gravity, for example. Something we take for granted all the time, but in a simulation that has to be added. How objects react to gravity, that is a behavior. That is something we can insert on this side of the screen into any object. So I'm going to stop this for a moment. I'm going to select the cube here. And here are the components that determine the behavior of the object. And we can see it already has a few interesting components. It has the transform, of course, that tells us where in space it is. It does have it has a visual appearance. It's also there as a mesh filter there. It also has a collider behavior, so it senses if other objects collide with it. And through that behavior, we can set up some reactions that happens if you walk into it. And mesh render has to do with how it looks, how it's being rendered. But there's no mention of gravity there. So we can press this button, add some more behaviors. And let's see, there's something called physics. And rigid body is a physical simulation model of how objects interact in a three-dimensional world. It's a basic physical model that assumes that the objects are all rigid, that is, that they're not squishable. They're all hard objects. It's a very simple simulation, but it will do. So now I've added the rigid body behavior to this object, the cube. And let's just see what happens if I run the world now. It falls, and it stops, luckily, on the ground. And that's because they all already have the collider behavior. They can actually collide with each other and therefore stop each other. So now this cube is falling, but the sphere is not falling. So we have to select the sphere and add the physical behavior to that as well. A rigid body to the sphere. And now we run the world. There you go. We have movement. And it could make it even a little bit more interesting by having the, let's see, here, having it, wow, it's still balances on top of the box. I was trying to make it like really hard for it to balance. Here we go. Okay, there you go. So now our simulation is getting dangerous. That thing is even coming in our direction. You will notice, that we are just watching the world from the point of view of a static camera. So there's no interaction yet. We can, it might be a beautiful painting, beautiful animation, but we don't necessarily feel like we are there interacting. So what we need is an object in the world that represents the viewer, the person that can go in there and interact. And those objects are called controllers in the Unity language. And we would hope that we would find such a controller in our assets here, but they don't come default. So we have to add another package, the character package. The character package has both fully autonomous characters that can walk around on their own, but they can also allow a person to become a character and interact with the world. So let's import the character package. We'll import all of these things. It gives you this confirmation about whether you really want to import all of these objects, and just say, yeah, sure, why not? Give us everything. And then it brings in everything from that package. It's a little bit large, I suppose. So it might take a little bit of time it's literally copying these things into that folder on your machine. So that folder is going to grow and grow with stuff that you have collected. So these projects can be quite big, actually, in the end, on your disk. Okay, so now we have a new folder called characters, and first person character is here. You will see some more folders. I'll talk about prefabs later, but in this prefab folder is this brick for our Lego stuff that is called the first person controller. If you can't read it properly, what it says there, you can change the size of this like that. And I can grab the first person controller and drop it into my scene. And it's kind of fighting with the old camera that is just sitting there statically. So I can now disable the camera. This little toggle at the top of every object property here is whether that object is enabled or not. So now I've disabled my camera, but I have my first person controller in there now. If I double click on an object, it will show me where it is in the world. So I can see that I'm way off. I landed way off the actual world that we were building. So I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to position it. Actually, I'm going to position it over here probably and rotate it also. Wait. Okay, maybe I'll do it precisely. There. So I now have a presence in the world, hopefully. Let's see what happens if I press play. You notice that if I press play like that, it gets played in this window over here, where I put the game window. But if I have maximize on play selected, this window will actually grow when I press play, and that's kind of nice. So now I have it selected. So now I press this. I can see. Did you hear that little click click sound? What's that? Yes, that's my feet. I can't see my feet, but my feet are there, invisible, and they still make a sound. So if I walk, I'm actually walking in this world. Where's the ball? Oh, there's the ball. Maybe we can even stop the ball from rolling. Whoop. Okay, now we can play soccer. It's good. I can manipulate things. So I have a physical presence. I don't have any visual presence, however. I'm completely invisible, but that can be fixed later. So if if the first person controller is here as an object, and you can see it comes with a lot of behavior. And one of the behaviors is a rigid body behavior, meaning that my presence is actually taken into account in the physical simulation. And there's an audio coming from it as well. Speaking of audio, worlds kind of need audio. I mean, I feel like there's something missing if there's not some sort of transformation from one audio environment to another audio environment. We've already transformed into a different visual environment, but I feel like the audio has to come as well. There's not much in terms of audio in our assets here. See, this is getting a little bit crowded of stuff, and soon you'll completely lose track of what's there or how to find it. So there, it comes with a few aids, and one of the very useful aids is the search by type box here. You can do search for, say, audio clip. It actually shows you all audio clips in your box. It only has these footstep audio stuff. You wouldn't want to make that to be the ambient soundscape of this world. So in short, we don't have any sound just for the environment in general here. So I'm going to find something nice to put in there. This is very important. When you set up your Unity environment, you should also create an account on the asset store, or basically a Unity account. And this is free also. This is not something you have to pay for anything. But if you go into this asset store here, which is another window, you're connected to the internet, and you get sort of like an app store for Unity. And this is just all sorts of stuff that you can put in your project. And of course, these things cost a lot of money, most of them, but there's also a whole bunch of free stuff that you can insert into your project. And now let's look for an audio ambient. So a lot of people have created nice soundscapes for different environments. Well, I'm just looking for the free one. So I'm just going to do this one. It's a sample pack of ambient, sort of neutral sounds. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to download it. It's downloading. In your projects, in this course, I'm encouraging you to go out there and use everything you find. I mean, just use anything you find in your environments. Think of all of the things like visual things and auditorial things. But super important is to credit everything that you find and use. So every project should have one file, like a text file, that says, I'm using this package, this package, this package. I'm using sounds from that store, from this company or this person. You can also go out and find free music. You probably all found free music on the internet. You can get these websites that just people are sharing music. Again, just credit them and make sure you have the copyright to use it in your own personal project. So I'm importing this now. I downloaded it first from the asset store. I now imported it into my projects, and this will then, these sounds will now get imported into my project structure there. It takes a little bit of a while. Again, it's just copying. And now it's copied. I can close this door. And now when I look for audio clips, I get more. I get a bunch of stuff, in fact. And I need to associate audio with some object in the environment. Audio by itself is not really an object. It has to be, it's a property, essentially. It's a behavior, if you will. It's a behavior of an object to emit audio. So I can select, for example, just the plane itself, the grid itself here. And I can add a behavior to it. I can add an audio behavior. I can add a source, an audio source. This says that this object in the world has the behavior of emitting audio. And that behavior got added as one new component. And as you can see, there's no clip selected there. I can simply drag things in there. And I'm thinking, let me see, we can always preview these things. That's kind of a cool thing. It's just sort of, yeah, it's a very neutral thing. Try not to what do you say, infuriate people with some really annoying sounds when you put them into the environment. So let's take this again. We put the plane, and we can just drag this one into the audio clip field. And now this component knows to use that audio when it's playing back. And let's play it. You hear it. It's there all around us.
If you place a song in a medium, for example, in the cube, when you get closer to the cube,
yes, that's right. It will come. It is placed in 3D. You can set up some 3D parameters, how quickly it drops, how much further away you are. And yes, so you can place them in 3D everywhere. I like to have some kind of an ambient sound everywhere, maybe, and then have some specific sounds to different things. Exactly. That's another depth cue. Absolutely, that's an auditory cue. Precisely. So we have this now. I'm gonna actually change the placement of the first where you start. I'm gonna make you. Okay, where is it? I think I'm gonna put you here. I'll rotate you again so that we can see this coming your way. So now the ball comes in our direction like that. Perfect. So it's a really, of course, it's a very boring world, but we can take it into some weird places as well. And the last thing I'm going to do before, okay, we'll take a break in just a minute, is to play a little bit with the effects. So now it's putting in a lot of lighting cues and stuff into the environment itself. And then there are certain effects. Oh yeah, I'm going to show you maybe that the first person controller here, you can open this little triangle and you can see that it contains another object. It's actually two objects. And I think the inner object here contains the camera. And you can attach image processing shaders to the camera. It's kind of like attaching Photoshop filters to the camera. And there's a bunch of filters out there that make things look really cool. So I'm going to open it's just a component. A filter like that is just another component. But I'm applying it to the object that contains the camera. And here I have, okay, they're not by default in there. So let's again go to the asset store. No, sorry, asset menu. It's not on the store. It's just an import package and effects. So now I have imported three packages. I imported the prototyping package, the character package, and now the effect package. So those are the three packages that I brought in here from the standard Unity assets. And then I brought in one extra package, which was the ambient sound package from the asset store. So you can see how the building blocks are all coming together there. And now these effects are going to come in there. And let's see if they show up here. I can add image effects. Yeah, they got added to the available components here. Image effects, bloom. Bloom is one that is always kind of nice. I don't know if I should do optimized. Let's do optimized. See how it starts to. This is what did they actually used this in films when they were filming dramatic scenes, especially well, in the old days in black and white. They used this, what do they call it, the buttered paper? I know. No, they buttered basically the lens. That would like scatter the light a little bit around the edges. So you would see this kind of glow. This is basically a blurring mechanism. But it gives it a nice, weird type of look. And if you want to take it even a little bit further into some strange place, you can use some color adjustments and like sepia. Now we are in a completely different world, and you can see what it looks like. It's just all very bizarre. One more effect that we sometimes fun to play with also is to create the sense, like when we focus on some, like, okay, when we are focusing on the screen, when we look with our eyes onto that image on the screen, the whole image is the same distance from us. Like, so we see everything in focus, right? We see this in focus, and we also see that thing far away in focus. So we are missing that focus cue, something being out of focus further away. We can add that as a filter, image filter, and there's rendering, I think. No, camera depth of field. Here, I've now added a filter that makes things more blurry the further away they are, and it gives you that a little bit. You have to change maybe the threshold or the focal distance a little bit, and we can focus a little bit closer to us, I think, like that. So now these are really far away. That's why they're all blurry. And now if you run it, they're blurry. But when we come closer, they become clearer. And again, the blur, the further away I go, closer, and they become clear. So I can add more and more cues. What happens now if I walk really far away? I fell off. So that's what I wanted to show you. And last thing is that I can build this. So I can add the current scene. Oh, I didn't save the scene. And just save the scene as like that. And I can build it. And you can see here, I can select the different platforms. I can build it for an Xbox, and it's ready to go. Or Windows or Android or whatever. Just here, a PC, I'll build it. And I'll just build it on the desktop here. And VN test, I'll save it, and now it builds it and packages it and sends it to the desktop. And this is a lot better way to distribute this than taking a whole project. If you take the whole project, you're taking this whole folder with you. So if you want to share it with someone else, it would be insane to give them all of this because you're not even using all of it. But when you build it like that, you just it just packages on one exe, one executable, and one folder. This folder here only contains the assets that you are actually using, not the whole package. So if I run this, yeah.
So let's say you're not the one person working on this project.
Oh yeah, that's a pain. Like you basically have to put all the whole project then into a version control system. Yeah. It's going to be a huge folder with all kinds of, and you can try as you can to exclude certain files that always get built anyway on your local machine. But they have some support for Subversion, and what else they have? Yeah, we are just using our own Subversion, not really linked into the editor. But it's a pain to figure out exactly what files are good, and they admitted that this is a weak point of Unity, is they're not perfectly good at sharing very large files. But we can talk about those issues later also. But so if you're working together on a project, I think using a Subversion is nice. I think no, it's probably not a great idea to use Dropbox and much. No, sorry. On paying user, maybe. If I run this executable here, I get some options. I can do it full screen, and I do play. And I'm hoping that this will now just run. I'm in there, and now you can release this as your creation on the web or something, and people can download it and walk around your little environment. And we will also build this for the web, so that you can run it in a plugin. And so everything that you make in this class for your different assignments, we are going to share with each other so you can all try each other things out. So you will kind of build a portfolio of actual things that you can distribute. And then one more thing, and then I'll actually let you stand up and take a break. I'm sorry about that, but I'll take one more thing here, which is if I go into project settings, and the player is the device that then displays your world, whether that is a web app or application or something like that. But if you want to change some settings in the playback of your environment, you go into this player settings here, and there's a virtual reality support option. Here, virtual reality support. It's not checked right now, but I'm going to turn it on. I turn it on like that. Now we have a check mark there. And I go, I'm actually going to do play here. See any difference? It's in here now. I'm actually looking around through the. So one more cue that but we're not able to do on the screen there. What cue is that? Stereoscopic cues. This device has one image in this eye, one image in this eye. So it provides that stereoscopic cue by rendering two different views of the world and feeding it to each eye. It also has another cue, in fact, which you can't quite see because now there's only one object there. If I move around like that, if I had several objects, I can come closer, I can go further away. If I had several objects, maybe we can actually try it out, and I move to the side, what effect do I then get? What cue do I then get? The parallel thing is that the objects closer to me are going to move faster than the objects further away. So I get a few more cues through a device, like a virtual reality device like this. Do you notice that the sound stopped? That's why is that? It's not looping. So we can quickly change that. We can go to the plane and the audio and say loop the audio. That's just the behavior of the audio. I'm going to then build this with the VR option, or should we make the environment slightly more interesting maybe by taking this sphere and pasting a few more spheres there. Yep. Here's another sphere, and here's another sphere. So now there's a little bit more going on there. Okay, and now we'll save it. Building, building, and this is VR. Okay. So now for the rest of this class, well, we have a few more minutes really, but I'll just take a break basically. And during the break or for the rest of the class, you can come and try this out and see what the effect this has on the environment. Let's see. Did I already build it? Yeah, I think so. That was quick. So it now exists on here. And this device is usually turned off, but if you run, okay, you have to tell it to go and start display. If it's working, this should turn blue. So now it's turned blue. Oh, I can try to go away from it, but now it got me. Just to tell you a little bit about this device, so this is the Oculus Rift, and it has orientation tracking, so we know where this is facing. And this is basically like a gyroscope or the same thing you have on your phone. knows how it's turned. But that's not all. It also uses this infrared camera. This is an infrared camera here to spot. Can you see the infrared lights? You can't see them. You can't see infrared. But there's a lot of LEDs in front of this device and also on the sides of the device. They're actually shining lights, bright lights. This camera can see those lights. You can't. But this camera sees those lights, and by looking at the pattern that it sees, you can see how far away it is, for example. Because with the perspective photographing, the LEDs are going to get closer and closer together, further away you go, and then further apart. But you can also see the orientation in space and location very well from that information as well. So it is tracking you completely with 6 degrees of freedom. And so, yeah, let's take a break. And if you want to try it out, just come here. Especially those who has not tried it before. Someone not tried it before. Okay, at least you start with those that have not, and well, everyone should have a chance to try. Any questions in general? Because I will just break after this.
Question.
Yeah.
That course, is it released before that Friday?
I could do it probably the night before. Oh, no, I can't promise it. I can promise it in the same morning. And it will be up. I mean, we will have the class to do it, but you can actually turn it in also a bit later if you want. So I just want everyone to have a chance to work on it. But typically, I'll be preparing it also until through Thursday. Any other questions? And you can use. We have a couple of these devices upstairs, and for your projects and things like that. I mean, we could think of it would be fun to try it out on different projects. But we'll talk more about that later. All right, thanks a lot for today. And I'll probably just stop. I'll see if the broadcasting is still going on. Stop.